Good evening, everyone, and welcome to November's Open Mic Night. Tonight, USDA takes the mic and they're going to talk about a variety of programs that they have available for small-scale farmers, such as urban farmers. And we're so excited tonight that we have Juliana Arnett with the Ag Marketing Service, Joe Heller with NRCS's Office of Urban Ag, as well as Colleen Kiefer, who is with Nrcs Maryland. She's the district conservationist in Calvert County. And they're all going to talk with you tonight about the various programs that are offered that you guys can take advantage of. As we go through the evening, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And after each speaker, I will go ahead and kind of help facilitate the question and answer period. So without further ado, Juliana, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Again, when Alex offered me the opportunity to speak, I gladly jumped on it. I'm a recent transplant from California, so I'm probably overly excited to meet and hear what people are doing. So it's really great to hear about the different projects that you are all involved in when it comes to urban ag. As I mentioned, I work on local and regional food systems for the USDA for interagency coordination. I'm doing that specifically out of the agriculture and marketing services, which you might be familiar with us because we have grants like the Farmers Market Promotion and Local Food Promotion Grant. We also have some of the cool directories on local foods, looking for CSAs and urban ag. I'm going to focus tonight solely on our pandemic response and safety grant program, which is part of the pandemic relief efforts that are happening at USDA. And while I'm only focusing on this program, I'll be sure to drop in the chat at least one of our resources that really highlights some of the different programs that might be of interest. I debated whether to share a PowerPoint tonight. Instead, I thought, maybe I will just share with you the link to the Pandemic Response and Safety Grant portal. And you're free to look at it while I talk about the program. But this is a program that this is a brand new program that we are using to help provide relief to processors, distributors, farmers markets, and producers. We have about $650 million that are available currently through this program. And the intention is for the funds offered through the Pandemic Response and Safety Grant Program to provide relief to those who have spent money to protect workers against the novel coronavirus. These funds will be used to issue grants for, again, costs that food processors, distributors, farmers markets, and producers of all sizes may have incurred between January 27, 2020 and December 31 of this year during the public health emergency. The grants will cover a variety of activities associated with protection measures. These include workplace safety. So any measures that you may have implemented for workplace safety measures to protect workers that worked on the farm. Market pivots such as developing and implementing online platforms or utilizing online or print materials to communicate market pivots. If you had to retrofit facilities, installation and purchase of protective barriers such as plexiglass and walk-up windows or heat lamps and heaters. And then also for transportation. So providing additional transportation options to maintain social distancing for workers and consumers. So that could be like new delivery routes or distribution services, as well as securing additional transportation services for workers. Worker housing, which I'm not sure if that's totally applicable to this crowd. If so, happy to get into that more. Also providing health services to protect workers against COVID. That could be, enabling vaccinations, testing, or healthcare treatment. Again, not sure if that's completely relevant to this crowd, but happy to get into that more as well. And basically, when we are saying to cover cost, we are looking to reimburse folks for expenditures ranging from $1,500 to $20,000. Who is eligible? How we are looking at this is we're really focused on small businesses in certain commodity areas, again, farmers markets and small specialty crop producers. According to stakeholder feedback, these really were the entities that felt this. They were significantly impacted by COVID-19 impacts, and trying to make these types of adjustments to keep their workers safe and also to pivot as needed. We are using, when I say small business entities, we are using the eligible industry table. If you're not familiar with that tool, I will put that in the chat in just a few minutes as well so that you can go there. But basically, this is a self-identification tool. You look for, no one assigns you a category, you look for the category that you best fall into. This program is open until next week. So it's been open since October 6th, 2021, but it closes on November 22nd. So I would encourage everyone to apply ASAP. All applicants to apply must have a DUNS number. I heard several of you mention that you run a business or your farm is a business. So the DUNS process can take up to 5 business days to complete. So would actually recommend that you do that today. If possible, you apply, and this process is really, they have made it as simple as possible. It really should take 15 minutes for the entire process, and for the DUNS number, it should be quicker than that. So we have a very easy to use portal to register for this grant. I will say that there is also a help desk that operates from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time for folks that may have questions about the application process, or getting a DUNS number if that's new to you. And I can put that information in the chat as well. But that's a very quick overview of the Pandemic Response and Safety Grant Program. Did want to ask if any folks had questions, and happy to give more information or to try to clarify questions that you might have.
Thanks so much, Juliana. I didn't know if, looks like we have a question from Jamila, and I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen and just showing folks what the website looks like, and maybe just giving us a little bit of a quick tour.
Sure. And Jamila, I see your hand up, so I will, once I share my screen, I will get to your question. Okay. So this is the Pandemic Response and Safety Grant Program portal. This is the link that's in the chat box. This gives you all the information that you need to basically apply. It's a 3-step process. You can check your eligibility by clicking on this box. It'll take you a little bit lower down on the website. And basically what they're looking to confirm is that you are a small business, you're a small producer, food processor, distributor, or operate a farmer's market, and all farmers markets are eligible. I know there's different nonprofit classifications for different types of farmers market. They're all eligible with this program. So then it goes down here and it asks you to put in your NACE code, which was what I was referencing earlier, which may be a new language to folks, but we've tried to make it pretty simple. And you look for the classification that most closely aligns with what you do. I would assume, but don't know for sure, a lot of folks are probably in this other food crops grown under cover, or other non-citrus fruit farming, or other vegetable and melon farming. And then for step 2, you apply for the DUNS registration number. It's a very easy process, provides all the instructions here. Should take you maybe about 5 minutes to get this done. And there's even an easy way to check if you already have a DUNS number before you proceed. Sorry, still trying to. And then step 3, you finish your application, which is a very simple application process, and then you're done. So it really should be about 15 minutes. If you have any questions, again, there's just some really quick tabs that you can click on down here, including who can I contact for questions and help with my application. Again, they're available till 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then we have tabs with, FAQs that you may have about your business, eligibility info, etc. But pretty simple process. Jamila.
Thank you. Thank you for this. So I have two questions. I promise to make it short. So when you apply, are you applying to become eligible to then file for reimbursement? Or is this 1 week period that's left? Is this the period we have to start submitting like claims or requests for reimbursement? You know what I mean? Like,
so you mean like when you submit the application, is it a process where then we have to go back and verify more information, or are you asking if you apply and you're done and then you're just waiting on the determination? Is that the question?
So the question is, you said this is good for like another week, like the program goes for like another week.
Yes.
So does that mean that we have a week to apply to become part of the community that can then request reimbursement for expenses related to COVID? Or does that mean that we actually have like 1 week to like send in all of our claims and be reimbursed for it?
It means that, so actually that's a really good question. And I'm glad you asked that, because that way I can further clarify. So you have a week to apply, but that DUNS number again can take up to 5 business days. So it's going to be a real tight turnaround at this point, but it can take less. I've had to do that myself when I, lived in another world. However, how they are making the determinations is they are not making the determinations or the payouts based on first come, first served. They're getting all of the requests for funding, which need to be in place by November 22nd. And then they're going to be taking a look at the request, and then they're going to be funding them based on the amount of money that we have, which is again $650 million, and also the need that individuals have requested through the program. So just as an example of what that means concretely, if a producer asks for, let's say, they asked for $3,000 and we have a very high volume of requests that exceed the $650 million, we could potentially prorate the requests that people have or make for the funds. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And the reason why I ask is I know with some grant programs, it's like a 2-tier process where you like apply to be eligible, and then sometimes you have like a whole year to then submit claims, that apply to that particular grant program. So I just wanted to clarify. My second question, maybe it's not really a question, but like somebody on social media sent me a USDA grant opportunity or something similar to this. And I was very offended that they sent it to me because I thought it was fraudulent. So I'm so happy you did this presentation because I can see the difference, like what you presented and what some things are floating around that's pretending to be USDA or pretending to be the state of Maryland, and they're probably like fraudsters. So I'm really happy that I didn't fall for that one. I guess the question is, are you aware of, any of these fraudulent COVID reimbursement programs that we could look out for so we don't become victims of that, or no?
I'm not. I've had one stakeholder reach out because they were concerned about a program, but it was a legitimate program being offered through Agriculture Marketing Services. But if you're uncertain, I'll put my contact information in the chat box. But if it's coming from Agriculture Marketing Services, or if it's focused on local and regional foods, happy to verify whether that's actually a USDA program or not.
Thank you.
Sure. Linda, did you have a question about the program?
Yes, I did. Just a quick question. As far as reimbursements are being considered, are the payouts going to be like later in the middle of 22, or are they sort of coming in before the end of the year? My question is, I'm asking it because, like, say for instance, if you file me a tax, I guess you have to put this on your tax documents as you send out W-9s, I believe, or something, to have it added as income. So how late are you guys making decisions? And if somebody was to get approval, is it coming like the middle of next year? So you can't put it on 2020. So are they considering that it's an after year type of I guess expense if you were to get approved?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would have to go back to our grants division and ask them if they had specificity on when they were planning to allot the grants. I can say with certainty that I do not believe that we plan to make it happen before the end of this fiscal year, but I'm happy to circle back with Kim and get you a better response on when these will likely be made. And I should also use this opportunity to clarify, we're planning to do a first round of funding, but depending on the availability and the amount of requests, we may be doing other rounds of funding as well. So if someone's not awarded in the first round, it doesn't necessarily mean that that they are not going to be reimbursed as they requested.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like we have a comment or a question in the chat box from Salima. Are there any grants only for those with an official business license? Or the grants, I'm sorry, only for those with an official business license?
Yeah, I will say, so when you apply for a DUNS number, which is required for this grant program, you are required to have an official business, your official business license. And so, yes, that would be the yes.
Is it only for food products, or would cut flowers be eligible?
It is on, this one is only for food products. Well, for processors, distributors, and producers that are focused on food. Sorry, I heard that you had the cut flower operation. I figured that might be a question.
Yeah, I figured. I know there's been the cut flower industry is generally like left out a lot. So I'm not surprised. It's okay.
It's good feedback, so I appreciate that.
Now, I have to say this, some flowers are considered edible. So it depends on, I guess, what flowers you're growing. If they're grown for food, like celosia and there's a lot of flowers out there that are considered food. So that might be something that might need to go on the radar, say if they're producing certain flowers, edible flowers. So that might be something for future concern.
That is true, and I can definitely go back and look and see if our grants team has discussed that one. If not, to update our FAQ about edible flowers.
Okay.
It's a good point.
Great questions tonight. Do we have any other ones for Juliana? I was happy to see that the application is very short.
We're trying.
That's helpful. That is really helpful.
If folks don't have other questions, and I'll still be on the call for a few minutes, I will say I am putting down in the chat a link to our USDA programs in the local food supply chain. I'm not sure if this group is already pretty familiar. I'm going to guess that you're quite familiar with folks at the USDA and talk to us quite often. But this one outlines what programs are available and breaks it down by supply chain category. So production, processing, conservation. So I think it makes it a little bit easier to see what programs might be relevant to you. And the columns are focused on our grant programs, but we also highlight at the bottom of the page our education and technical assistance services as well. So just wanted to make that available since I do work on local and regional foods. The pandemic response and safety grants a little bit out of kind of my normal wheelhouse, but wanted to make a plug, and also just knowing that this is a group who cares deeply about local and regional food systems. So wanted to make sure that was out there.
Thank you so much, Juliana, for coming tonight and spending some time with us. And I didn't know if you minded putting your email in the chat box in case folks had follow-up questions. And if there's anything that you wanted to send to folks, after this call, feel free to send it to me and I'm happy to send it out to everyone.
Sure, great. No, thanks for having me. Really nice to meet y'all, and I'll put my information in the chat. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. And thanks to Alex for introducing us.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
All right. Joe, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Just gonna do a quick plug because we do have an open job announcement for the USDA Office of Urban Agriculture Director's position. So I will just flash this on the screen here, and then I will put the link. It's usajobs.gov, but the position does have several different categories of applicants that are eligible. So federal employees, individuals with disabilities, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps Vista, career transition, military spouses, and special authorities, and of course, veterans tied into the military spouses. So we're really excited about that. The location of the position will be in Washington, D.C., and we're really excited. We're hoping to have a great, successful list of candidates as the director. So I just want to briefly talk about the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. For those of you that aren't aware, it was developed in the 2018 Farm Bill. And we have 4 statutory requirements that we're working on. One is a federal advisory committee. We do have pilot urban and suburban county committees. And these are our 2 outreach functions, and I'll explain them a little bit further in a few slides. And then we have 2 funding opportunities as well. So did I share my screen yet? Did it pop up on this? Let me pop that up again.
There it goes.
Okay, sorry. So we're really excited. In the next few days, we should hear about the Federal Advisory Committee, which is made up of 12 members of the public. And as you can see here, there are a wide range of representation that are looking at individuals who are urban ag producers or ag producers, representatives of institutes of higher education and extension staff, businesses and economic development, individuals with supply chain, as well as individuals from financing entities. So people that have experience with business development and skills in terms of funding for urban agriculture will be supported in this. And when you look at supply chain experience, some of the things that Juliana had even talked about with, how we're, responding to the needs of our communities based on what we learned from the pandemic and how to be able to provide resources where they're needed the most. What's really exciting is that this is an opportunity for the public to have input on our programs, as well as these new urban county committees. So urban county committees, quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time here during this evening. They're a form of local input from producers that are peers, and they vote themselves in. And those local groups make decisions on how USDA programs are administered locally. So they've typically always been in rural areas. This is an opportunity for how they can now be located in urban centers. And since they're pilots, we want them to be unique and not just urban farmers attend, but could also be food policy councils, members of local governments, and other entrepreneurs and people involved in food and food access. So excited about this. There's going to be a release of 6 more. You can see where the stars are FY20s, and then FY21s are in phase 2. So that's really exciting. And then we do have these 2 funding opportunities, which I'll go through. One is for community compost and food waste reduction, and they're only eligible to municipalities, as you can see here in the bullets. But soil and water conservation districts are eligible. And then there's other categories to ensure that we have equity with tribal organizations and our local townships to ensure that they're involved. So state governments and even cities do get these grants, but we're really encouraging smaller communities to get involved. So for example, here, Prince William County Public Schools, they have a food waste composting and education pilot. So there's this video that they created with the poster campaign that's in the school. And the video is great, but I didn't want to show it. It goes through the cafeteria and the students, putting the waste materials in different baskets, as well as the classrooms. And then their municipality is pretty slick. They have a great composting program, and they really have fine-tuning equipment to culture the compost and have a great product. So that's exciting. And then in comparison to another food waste project where they're actually giving out buckets to residents to separate their food waste and also teach them skills on kitchen skills to reduce food waste as well. So really exciting on that end with the compost and food waste reduction. And then on our competitive grants, it has a larger eligibility of opening, which has nonprofits, units of local government, tribal, and schools K through 12. So a lot of people will say, well, why didn't it have an opportunity for private businesses to apply? It's only nonprofits. And I think the thought was behind it that those nonprofits would then subgrant to other organizations that may find it difficult to compete in the grant world per se. So those opportunities, it will focus on where there's a lack of access to fresh foods, but our criteria will be shifting and changing as we learn more about the needs of urban farmers. This one here, I won't talk about it too much because of time, but this is a planning project in Newburgh where they've had funding since 2015. It's really a strong program, but as it builds, working with different faith-based organizations and charity groups and pressure from development, they're coming together for long-term sustainability of their urban project. So exciting to see what results that they'll come up with as models with that. So with that, I think I'll just kind of sort of, I'd love to, hear and questions and, more from the group about, how we can be more helpful.
Thanks so much, Joe. If anyone has questions, feel free to, raise your hand or come off mute. You can use the chat box. This is really exciting to have this Office of Urban Ag, and we really appreciate Joe coming on tonight. He's been, again, as you guys know, to some other open mic nights and has been very involved in urban agriculture in New York City and New York State for some time. So this is a great time to ask him questions, or, if you have thoughts or ideas about the Office of Urban Ag, he is all ears. So please share.
I have something to say, or ask actually. So as far as me becoming I'm actually, like I said, a beginning farmer. I actually finished the program at Eco City. How do you guys help out people like finding land or actually getting into farming itself? Do you have programs like that, or someone has to be actually seasoned before they can utilize your services?
Joe, I think you're on mute.
Great. So depending on the type of project that you're looking to develop at your farm, if you were looking to start like Eco Farm with something like a high tunnel and moving in the direction of establishing, say, a crop farm, we would certainly want to introduce you to our field staff that have USDA responsibilities to work directly one-on-one with urban farmers. And the first thing would be to develop a conservation plan. So that would, I think, be the first step. However, oftentimes what we're finding is that some people may be doing different things on urban farming that our field staff at NRCS or the Farm Service Agency may not always provide. So we want to ensure that the public is, we bring responsive to the public. So as our Office of Urban Agriculture grows, we are looking to seek resources that are pathways to success. So land access is one of the top issues that we see that are facing urban farmers, and hopefully connecting a network of producers, of landowners and producers that are a matchmaking service so that this could take place. It does happen differently in different parts of the country. And one of our applicants this past year, the American Farmland Trust, actually in New York, is looking at trying to resolve some of those issues as a model for what can be across the nation.
And I also mentioned that EcoCity Farms did receive one of the competitive grants this year to start the help launch the incubator farm. And so some of you on this call actually might be a part of that project. And we'll be talking a little bit more about it, and we'll probably have an open mic night about it once things get going this spring. But just wanted to mention that and also put in a plug for the Office of Urban Ag. And thanks so much for funding this program to expand urban farming in Prince George's County and really in the metro region. It looks like we have a couple in the chat box. Armand would like to know how the newly passed infrastructure bill will affect urban ag.
My understanding is that I don't have a full answer to it because I'm not that poised. If Juliana was on the call, she may have information. But when you're looking at the local and regional food supply system, I think in general, some of those would help in urban areas where infrastructure needs to be built up, whether it's for transportation and distribution issues. But that is an excellent question, and I'm glad you challenged me with it because I will find an answer.
Thanks, Armand, and Joe, thanks for always doing the research. It's awesome. The next question is from Jamila, who would like to know about the curbside food waste pickup program. Is it run by a nonprofit? She wanted to know if you knew anything about who picks up the waste.
Yeah, so
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh yeah, I'll certainly get more information from the recipient, and we can get it out about those particulars. So that was actually a 2021 project that was just funded in September, and they're pretty progressive, and they got that stuff out right away. So I will look into that. I'm quite sure that what it was is, since it was a municipality that applied for the money, I think they subcontract the composting with another organization that then is running and doing all the pickups and drop-offs. So whether they were a nonprofit or a for-profit business, I would just have to hunt that down.
Thanks, Joe. And Esther may have some more information from the Department of the Environment about the curbside. I think there's some pilot programs in the county, and actually, Armand, you may know as well, for food waste pickup. It's not everywhere, but maybe one of you guys could kind of talk a little bit more about that.
It's not everywhere yet. They did a pilot program in several neighborhoods. They're compiling the results, and they hope to roll it out maybe sometime next year to everybody once they get the results in and do some detailed revisions to it based on the results they get. But it's coming.
Thanks, Esther. Very exciting news. And Salima wanted to know, would you consider as a pilot program selecting a few urban farmers and training them to start their own ag business from land purchase to production to profit?
I think that would be something that would be of interest to the office as we look at different pilots. One of the pilots that was discussed and would be something with land access, because there's a need for preserving these lands and also helping the urban farmers, like what was asked earlier was, hey, I'm just going through a program and I'm looking for land or opportunities and they're just not available. So and a concept of how this would work would be through like 10 pilot projects with a navigator that would help those individuals and nonprofit entities, land trust, for example, navigate USDA programs as well as private loans to get people access to land. So we feel that that could happen, and then along the way, there's a lot of training and development that's underway for urban ag. So, for example, at the agency that Juliana works for, the Ag Marketing Service, they have a program with Cornell University through the Promise of Urban Agriculture, and that is like a higher level of training and education in commercial urban agriculture. So it's not for beginning farmers, and it'll be interesting to see how we can incorporate that with like what you're saying, where you're turning production into profit, where you're taking a higher skill level of agriculture and experience in urban areas, which does exist without even formal training. But how do we then accelerate that through our grants and loans program? So I think the pilot would be considered. However, this is where we need your public input. So when we do have, and I'll put it in the chat, an email address that goes to our general box, and everything is recorded, as well as your local federal Farm Service Agency county committees, whether you're part of an urban county committee or one that's associated with an existing county committee. Your voice can be heard. Just because you don't have a vote at the table doesn't mean that those aren't public forums. So we want to encourage people to speak up. I'm sure, Kim, you have people that speak at your meetings that are public meetings, and these are great opportunities, as well as through the new Federal Advisory Committee. So those 12 members are members of the public, and people can reach out to them to let them know what the different things that they want us to utilize our grants and funds for. So we're excited that, going into 2022, and I'm kind of going off on a little bit, that we are looking to hear from the public about how we run our programs. So in the next few months, and with a new director and how they want to handle it, we want to, I hate to say the word listening session, because we've heard from a lot of people, again, another listening session, we're going to go through this. We kind of know what the topics are, but it's an exercise I think that we have to take so that we can better serve you and make sure that the resources and funds are going to the right types of projects.
Thanks, Joe. And I wanted to mention, Joe is very accessible. So if you have thoughts or ideas that maybe come to mind after the fact, please share them with them. And, if I don't know, Joe, if you have some kind of email list for when you do have upcoming listening sessions. I know when I hear stuff, I forward it along, but some folks might want a direct pipeline. So if there's any of that information that they can sign up for on farmers.gov, that would be great to know about.
Yeah, Gov Delivery, I'll drop that into the box. The thing is, with Gov Delivery, it's you select through multiple categories of what you want information on. So I'm sure maybe there might not be too many of you that want to do stuff on grazing livestock, but you never know. So you have to make sure you're selective so you don't get overburdened, but get the right information.
That is definitely good advice. Can it get overwhelming once you start clicking all those boxes? Oh, that looks interesting. And next thing you know, you have a bunch of newsletters. This is actually a question for Linda and from Jamila, which is a great question. The Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission might be a good organization that would submit applications, for these types of grants for urban ag.
So yes, I put a response in there that SMATIC does several rounds of mini grants per year, and they're approved based on the specificity of the project that the farmer is working on, and they do this 2 to 3 times a year. So most of the grants range from maybe like 2,000 or a little bit more or less, based upon depending on how many people are applying and how much money they have. But they just finished second round, and about 20 people were approved, and another one is coming up pretty soon. So it's based upon whatever money is available, and then they go out and, advertise it and then take the applications in and then, just convene, approve or deny based on what the project is and how it will fit into the farmer actually improving his or her profitability and the farm that they're working on.
Thanks, Ms. Linda. So the reason why I was asking is because since as individuals, we can't apply for the money that Joseph was just talking about, I was just curious if does SMATIC get money from agencies like Joseph's? Is that where SMATIC gets their money from? And if
it comes from various entities, some directly through the state, through other programs, and they may have a surplus in some areas and they want to, use it for other, reprogram it for other purposes. So that's where most of the money comes from. Not saying that they're just, whatever's left over, they give it to the small farmers, but they do have that process already in consideration. So whatever comes through, and then they put it out, say, just on the Commerce Business Daily, if you're working for the government, say, okay, this money is here, you can apply for it. And if you're approved, then they tell you exactly, what the eligibility requirements are. If you meet the eligibility requirements, then, and if there's enough money and not too many applicants, they will approve it. Sometimes they have to reduce the amounts based upon how many applications they get. So they're very fair, I would say, and they look at every project individually, as well as whether or not the person has applied for grants in the past, so as not to keep approving the same farm over and over if there are other people that are, interested in applying. So you may get multiple grants if nobody's applying based upon what you're asking for, to use the money for.
Thanks for mentioning the mini grants, Linda.
Yeah.
I also wondered, Jamila, part of your question, is it that, are you making a request, a message for Linda to pass back to the SMATIC board? Would they consider applying for this grant in the future and then just, to use that to disperse funds directly to urban farmers? Is that part of your request?
Thank you, Kim. Yes.
That's what you're asking. Okay. Well, I will send that question has probably been answered in the fact that they keep getting a lot of money. We keep getting a lot of money. And some of that might be through being the requestor or the recipient of someone saying, hey, SMATIC can probably administer those grants and get people to get approved for them. So, SMATIC probably does, on the side that I'm not totally aware of, where all of the money comes from, but we get the money through various avenues. Some might be through USDA directly, some might be indirectly from the state, county, or city. It just depends. So the money's there, shows up, and it's available, so they make sure that it gets out before they can no longer use it. So that's the game plan. Money comes in, they got $100,000. Okay, they send it out. We have $100,000. We're accepting applications till this date. You apply. If 10 people apply and they have $100,000, who knows? Maybe each person might get $10,000, depending on what the requirements are. Sometimes you have to match what you're asking for. So if you ask for 2,000, you have to be able to match it 2,000. So, they do have some eligibility requirements, but it shows up in various avenues. I can't say exactly where every avenue is, but there are several avenues that the money comes in, and they make sure that it gets out to the farmers, because that's their job to advocate for and support urban ag, farming, and other agricultural businesses in the county.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any, because I want to make sure we have some time for Colleen as well. And I don't know if Julie has any comments as well after Colleen presents. Do we have any other questions for Joe this evening? I know it's getting late for folks, but Joe, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. Does anybody see Joe? I think Joe may have accidentally dropped out. Okay, well, well, if he comes back in, we'll thank Joe. So we really appreciate him coming on. He's been very accessible and willing to chat with us just about what's going on with this office. So again, we really appreciate his efforts and working with our Prince George's County farmers. All right.
He left a comment that he's leaving.
Oh, he did. Okay. I see it now. Thank you, Kwesi. All right. So next up we have Colleen. Colleen, if you wanted to do an introduction and tell us a little bit about when NRCS Maryland has on the tap, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like I said, I work with NRCS Maryland. I'm actually in Calvert County, but Mitch and Julie is on this call. They both work in Prince George's and Anne Arundel counties. So if you are in either of those counties, they would be your points of contact, but all the information is the same. Basically, NRCS, we in Maryland, we work within the Soil Conservation District offices. So we do, everyone kind of works together a little bit to a certain degree, but we are all of this is in the name of conservation, and there are other state programs for different programs that may or may not be applicable to you guys based on the size of your operations. Today, I'm mostly going to talk about our high tunnels because I think they're probably the most thing that most people would be interested in. I'm not sure if people already, I'm sure maybe a few of you have already installed one of our high tunnels possibly in the past, but it's it's definitely the best program that we, financial assistance program we offer for urban farmers. So I have a few slides I'm going to share, and I promise I won't take up too much of your all's time tonight. Let's see. Okay, can y'all see that?
Looks good. Thank you.
All right, cool. Okay, so like I said, with NRCS, everything is sort of working from the standpoint of conservation. The high tunnels are a little bit, they maybe don't fit into that quite as much as everything else, but they are a huge help to definitely any of you all urban farmers. We do offer some other programs that I'm going to talk about, especially for those of you that maybe are a little bit less urban or have a little bit more acreage to work with. Some of those might also be of interest to you. So the high tunnel, I just wanted to share with you all a few of the requirements for when you're installing or for these high tunnels. You can't just build your own high tunnel. Usually it needs to meet certain qualifications. But basically how we would do the high tunnels is you would start by contacting, and in Prince George's County, you would just start by contacting Julie, and she would work on developing a conservation plan with you, which would take a look at any resource concerns that you might have on your property. And then she can definitely talk with you guys more about some of your options for these high tunnels. There are lots of working bits and pieces to all of these. And we've seen a lot of them. So we can try to help you make some of the decisions based on size or all sorts of different parts of how the high tunnels work. But in general, you have a lot of freedom to kind of custom make your own high tunnel, which is really awesome. But there are a few things that we do require for these. So the first is that it needs to be 6 mil plastic, which is very common. And it also needs to have the 4-year manufacturer's warranty. Now, when you start going around and looking for these, you will quickly find that every company who builds high tunnels markets their NRCS approved high tunnels. And so it's usually fairly easy to find, especially locally. A lot of people I know tend to go through the Amish up in Pennsylvania, through Nolts or Byler's. We've also had people recently who wanted smaller size tunnels who are going through Farmer's Friend. We don't endorse any specific company, but you do have a lot of options. So these really aren't super limiting criteria. The other thing, especially if you have a mixed operation with, maybe like chickens or something like that, is that these buildings need to, or if you did say like mushrooms or maybe some kind of hydroponic thing, it's really important that everything in these high tunnels has to be grown in the ground. So in the quote unquote natural soil. So you could definitely bring in compost. They do say making raised beds up to 12 inches. I don't think anyone ever actually goes and measures that, but we can't have anything that's being grown on tables. You can't use it as a greenhouse. But things have to be grown in the ground. So, a lot of people use these for tomatoes or doing stuff over the winter. The other thing is if you are doing I know a lot of people have started doing things in pots and things like that are not going to fit within the realm of what we're able to fund through this program. The other thing is that it cannot be used for livestock. So you cannot have chickens in it for the winter or ever really. They are looking, I'm on this, an organic group for NRCS, and there is a lot of talk about that potentially changing in the future because we recognize the benefits to the soil health by allowing animals to go in part-time of the year. But as of right now, that hasn't changed. So livestock need to have their own place to live. And the last thing is that it cannot be used to store any equipment really. Now, if you have your shovels or your hose or smaller hand equipment like that, that's fine. But problem we've had in the past is that people basically use this as their garage and they just take up the whole thing with their tractors and their ATVs or whatever it is, and that is not allowed. This is all the square footage of this should be used for things that are being grown or the pathways to get to them. So that is basically the requirements for this. It sort of sounds like a lot, but it's really, if you're growing vegetables or foods, I know for Jamila, we definitely, these can also be used for specialty crops like cut flowers. But yeah, so anything that's being grown in the ground that's a crop essentially can be used for that. Oh, and Linda, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a minimum size to this? Say if I don't need a 25, no, what size is this thing, right? 100 by 30?
So
25?
typically, yeah, the standard high tunnel size is a 96 by 30, but you're not held to that. And I'll get into that in a minute, but yeah,
Okay.
you can get that. I'm not aware of there being a minimum size. I think there are minimum heights
Okay.
that I've seen. I believe it's 8 feet though. It's not that high.
Okay.
So there is a minimum with that, and I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's 8 feet. It's not substantial. So the height, it would be your limiting factor there.
All right.
And Julie, if you know that height, or Kim, if you guys know that, I'm spacing on that right now. But okay, so then the other thing I want to get into is how the payments for these work. Or some of the things around that. So is paid by the square foot, and it has so that would be depending on the size that you signed up for, you would get a payment rate based on that square footage. So if you were only going to do like a 20 by 48, then you would only be paid on that square footage. And there is a $7,500 funding cap. So any expense that you pay over the $7,500 for the kit will be, you get paid based on that square footage. And so, but up until 7,500 square feet. So that typically is around the 96 by 30 sizes where you get that maximum benefit of the payment versus square footage. Now, that being said, this is, well, there's a lot of different things to it, but if you are unable to whatever, but anyway, so the other thing is that we do have the higher payment rates for any historically underserved or beginning farmers. If you're a veteran, there's a bunch of different categories, but then you are eligible for a higher payment rate. So the thing with these, how this goes is the payment rate, if you don't fit into that group, would be what it is, and if you do, you get a higher rate. Now you still have the $7,500 funding cap. So if you're getting the higher rate, that's really advantageous for those of you who are getting a smaller square footage. But if you're already planning on getting that larger high tunnel, the signing up as historically underserved really isn't going to matter because you're likely going to go over that $7,500 cap anyway. So that's just something to consider with all of this. The other thing to consider is that that square footage payment, even as a historically underserved, is likely not going to cover the entire cost of, and is not designed to cover the entire cost of your high tunnel. It's meant to help cover it. And depending on where prices are, it can be more or less. Right now, high tunnels are, if any of you have tried finding them lately, there's kind of a huge waiting list and the prices have gone up because of supply chain issues. So right now, those payments, they are going to be a lower percentage of what you're actually spending. The other thing to pay attention to when you're buying your high tunnels is that some, especially when you buy from the Amish, are often, they don't include a lot of the pieces, especially the end walls or something to look at. And that will elevate the cost of the high tunnel. So just because you bought the kit, you really want to be clear with wherever you're buying it from of what is included and what isn't. Also the lumber for some of these baseboards that you can kind of see in this picture here. And any of the wood for the end wall would also not be included. So those are just some things to consider when you're thinking about this. This will definitely help with the cost of them, but it is not designed to cover the cost. And especially with costs being the way they are right now, you're going to be paying a little more out of pocket than is typical until they change the price rates or prices go down. So moving along quickly here, the sign up for this year is coming up. So right now is a great time to be talking to you all about this. Our sign up for high tunnels this year is January 7th. So that's just when you need to have your application in. And when you talk to Julie or Mitch, they will take care of all of that stuff for you. There are a few different funding pools and programs that we kind of play the game on. You don't have to worry about them. They shouldn't change your eligibility. We just try to put you in multiple fund pools often just to give you the best opportunity of getting funded, because there is no guarantee that there's a ranking and based on your Prince George's County and based on the state. And that will dictate whether you actually get approved for funding or not. And that approval will usually happen in the spring. We never know the date, or the date changes a lot. So I'm just going to say spring. Ideally, we would have it by March or April, but it could be later depending on the program. And then from that point, you have a year to build your high tunnel. And I think in this group, it's probably not as much of a big deal, but you definitely want to make sure that you know who is building your high tunnel before you even honestly apply for this. We've had a lot of people who think they're going to think they can just find anyone to build this thing, and that is not the case. It can be somewhat challenging to hire somebody and also very expensive. It typically costs at least the price of the high tunnel, if not more, just to have someone come out and build it. And I know there are some companies and that are starting to do more of this, but they still do cost you money. So I would definitely recommend having that all lined up before you, or as you sign up perhaps, because if you can't find it now, you're going to have an even harder time finding it later when you're under a contract. So just something to think about. Definitely shouldn't scare you away, and a lot of people can build these things themselves. So it is very doable. And the last thing I'm going to mention is that there is a 5-year lifespan on these tunnels. So for 5 years, you have to follow all those rules that I mentioned before, where you can't have animals in it, you can't grow on tables, all those things. After 5 years, this thing is yours. We no longer claim any responsibility over it. And you can do whatever you want in it after 5 years. So that is basically the rules. That's basically how the high tunnels work. Real quick, I'm just going to mention some of these. Some other practices. Again, these are really going to be for people who have at least a couple of acres. We do offer pollinator habitat, cover crop, different soil health practices, and some years we offer micro irrigation. We still don't know if it's going to be available for this year or not. honestly, if you are under a couple acres, I would never recommend that you do the micro irrigation through us. We can certainly talk to you about how it works and ways to set it up. But you could probably install for less than that, for an acre or two, you could probably buy the whole thing for a couple $100s. So I would just definitely recommend avoiding the government and doing that on your own. But the great thing about all of this is, even if it doesn't make sense for us to cost share it, as they're updating your conservation plan, they can talk with you about all of this stuff. Give you, if you're looking at pollinator habitat, they can give you, we have the local recommended plantings for different types of monarch plantings or other pollinator plantings. They can talk to you about your seasonal cover crop, whether that be winter cover crops or specialized summer cover crops that might be good for your site. And a lot of different soil health practices that and different techniques and things like that you can use. So even if you're not getting cost share, we can definitely still help you if you're looking for more information about any of those topics. And that is all that I have. Here I've given Mitch's information, who is the district conservationist in Prince George's and Anne Arundel. Julie, if you want to add your information, Julie will likely be the person that you actually want to contact about. She's going to be doing your conservation plans. And Julie, I'm not sure if you had anything to add, but by all means, go ahead. And
well done.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's all the details, and really you can always ask Julie. So
Thank you so much, Colleen and Julie, for being on. We have a couple questions in the chat box. Linda wanted to know if you have anyone that you refer farmers to in terms of the construction of the high tunnel.
So we're not technically supposed to refer anyone to anybody. That being said, I kind of do. Especially in more recent years, Nolts has really gotten a lot better about their communication and everything. There's two Nolts. There's the greenhouse supplies and the produce supplies, and you want to talk to the greenhouse supply guys. They have they're Amish, so it's a catalog, but there's a PDF if you go to their website. But you don't want to go to the produce guys. You want to go to the greenhouse guys. And they have started selling more complete kits where you get a little bit more of the bits and pieces that you need in it, which is really helpful, and really well written instructions, or at least a lot better written instructions than some of the ones that I have built in the past, where it literally was just a picture. So yeah, them. And then I know that people are starting, and it's probably for urban farmers, I would imagine these new Farmers Friends tunnels are becoming more and more popular. They're a little bit smaller. They're a little bit easier to put up. I can't speak to the longevity of them. We've just started seeing people doing these, so we'll see how they stand out over the years. But those are two of the local companies. It's definitely cheaper to find someone local-ish just because of the cost of shipping the pieces of the high tunnel becomes costly. So, but also Julie should be able to give you a list of, we have a long list of high tunnel providers, and Julie can provide that to you when she does your conservation plan.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We have another question from John about assistance for repairs on existing high tunnels.
Yeah, we usually don't get into a ton of that. It's rare. Sometimes there's emergency funding that will come from larger storm events, but for the high tunnels, I have not seen a lot of people succeed in getting a lot of that repairing funding. Now, that would potentially would only even be eligible for that for the 5 years. But usually those costs are on you if something happens. Now, that being said, if you're building it to our standard, it's less likely that's going to happen. But it happens.
And then Armand was wondering about additional programs or grants, I guess, for soil conservation practices or soil health building practices for urban farmers specifically.
Yeah, so I'll admit we're pretty light on the urban farming. I think with some of this infrastructure bill, we might begin to see changes in that. The high tunnels really are our best urban program that we offer. That being said, depending on how urban you are, we do have a few other programs. We have one that's called CSP, and I've enrolled smaller vegetable farms that are maybe not super urban, but are doing a lot of these sustainable practices in that program. And that is a program that is basically, it pays you in multiple ways, but the big part of it is it's a 5-year program, and you get these annual payments that pay you for all of the good things that you're doing on your farm. So if you do cover crops, or rotating your crops, if you follow nutrient management rules, things like that, we kind of give you points based on all of that stuff, and that qualifies you for these annual payments that you would get. And then the other part of it is that you would have you'd do like an enhancement, they call them. So some of it's like putting in a little pollinator habitat. I've seen people put up bat boxes. Like, it just sort of depends on what you're interested in. But that comes with a minimum $1,500 a year payment. So it's not going to be right for everybody, but I know some of you are in Upper Marlboro, maybe you have a few more acres that you're working with, and a program like that could be a really good option for you. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much what we have as of right now. But I am hoping that changes in the future.
Great questions. Do we have other questions for Colleen? I know, looks like I have a question as well, but Jamila wants to know, can you confirm that the tenants can apply if they have a 5-year lease?
Oh yeah, so we definitely get people we deal with lease agreements all the time. Through us, what you're going to need to do, and it's something that Julie will help you with, is you'll set up records with the Farm Service Agency. So it'll create a farm and track number for you, and that's just to get you in our system. And with that, that usually, I think we've been using that almost exclusively now. What may happen is that we'll have some forms during sign up. After sign up, when we do your eligibility, and it may usually requires the landowner signature on something, or we used to do small notes, but it changes every year, so I'm not sure what it's going to be this year. But yeah, we can work with your landlord, just have them sign something that will allow you to. I don't even know if it requires the 5-year lease. It might require the 5-year lease, but they may have taken that away, so we'll see. But yeah, you can set that up that way.
Colleen, do you know I thought I had heard recently that they raised the raised bed height to 18 inches for high tunnels? Is it definitely 12? Do you know?
That has not changed in our state standard.
Okay.
It's very possible it has. Like I said, I have never seen anyone actually measure the height. So
okay.
I think 18, you'd
be okay.
I would think that's fine. I can double check the standard and see if that's changed. I wasn't aware that had changed, but yeah, I would think that would be fine. The big discouragement is the
benches and tables, yeah.
Yeah, or some really, really high raised beds, but I think between 12 and 18 inches, you're probably okay. I think Julie will forgive you.
And I guess one thing I just wanted to mention for folks, I think I loved your point about, just making folks if folks before they apply have kind of costed this out and found a supplier, because I know sometimes folks are surprised, especially if they want a smaller high tunnel, they don't get necessarily as much cost share because it's per square foot, but your labor charges are still very similar. So it just, making sure folks know that there's upfront cost and, they may not recoup everything. I know there's some rural some farmers who have really large high tunnels who they may have recouped a lot of their costs, especially if they got help building it. So just making that clear to folks so they understand that going in. We have one of our urban farmers who had a successful high tunnel in Mount Rainier, Doug Adams with New Brooklyn Farms. If you haven't had a chance to see his installation, it's lovely. Anyway, he shared this particular page and podcast from the Bootstrap Farmer that goes into just things to know about the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative. And I don't know if Colleen and Julie, if you guys have seen this or not, but they just kind of talk a little bit about their experience and collecting farmers' experiences with the program. So, you know, obviously your best sources are Colleen, Julie, and Mitch, but you know, some of you may want to look through that as well. I thought there were some helpful documents and pointers.
Yeah, I actually started using some of the Bootstrap materials that they provided for, because NRCS doesn't make very good handouts. And they had like a nice checklist on there of like all the stuff that you know would need to provide to them. So that's definitely a great resource.
Good to know. Thank you. Because I'm never sure. It like seems good, but you know, it's
yeah,
great
a
to hear
little.
from
It
you
might be
guys.
off a little bit, but it's
Great.
definitely more helpful than not. So
Great. Kwesi has a question. For any of you folks from USDA, is there any department within the department that deals with land grants for beginning farmers?
So FSA, I can tell you as much as I know about this, but FSA does provide loans. And if you're not familiar with FSA, that's the Farm Service Agency and some of their programs. There's a whole wealth of information that if you're not aware, you can dive into it. I honestly don't even know the whole of it, but they do provide grants loans for beginning farmers at very good rates. That could be a place to start if you are looking to buy a property and get some of your options. I know a lot of beginning farmers who have purchased, and all the beginning farmers that I know that purchase land have done it through the FSA loan program for beginning farmers. So as far as grants go, I'm not as sure, but FSA would definitely be the place for you to probably go next if you aren't familiar with that. Their programs.
Any other questions for Colleen? Well, Colleen, thank you so much for popping in tonight and for sharing this. This was a great presentation. Julie, we appreciate you coming on and sort of touching base with folks here so they know to reach out to you. And yeah, if folks decide after this that they're interested in the high tunnel, please email Julie. Feel free to copy me, and you know, I can share some information with Julie about you, and you know, we could get you guys signed up. I think, what was it, January 7th is the deadline for applications? I think you mentioned.
That's correct. Yep. And that's just your application. So, I mean, ideally you can get started with your conservation plan before that, but
Right.
Yeah, that's just when you need to have the application in.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys again so much for coming on this evening. Actually, Colleen, I might have you stop. If you guys want to copy down their information, and then we'll stop sharing the screen so we can go ahead and we'll conclude this portion of the program this evening. I have a few announcements, and we're going to open it up for announcements in a minute. But again, I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation this evening, and especially to our speakers from USDA. We really appreciate you being on and chatting with our urban farmers this evening. So thank you.